Microsoft is making things happen for us around Office 365 every day. They're bringing new innovations and new ways for you to adopt their technologies and new feature sets every day. That's exciting, and it's an opportunity for the IT organizations and, more importantly, their end users be more productive and get more out of the platform. Of course, that also causes some confusion sometimes. We've got lots of tools out there that sort of do similar things, whether it be groups and teams and Yammer and OneDrive and Planner. They all have some overlapping feature sets. How do we know when to use what? In this session today at the Office 365 Summit for Government, we're going to be discussing just this challenge, really this opportunity. Our presenter today is Jen Mason. We're really lucky to have Jen with us today. She's recognized internationally as an expert around collaboration. Before that, she was a SharePoint MVP, and she's also recently, in the last couple of years, been rolling out really an incredible service around end user adoption, continuous learning, and training, all of which helps her have great expertise in understanding how these tools need to be used and how they need to be adopted. Joining us on the panel again, Tony, welcome back.
Thanks, Steve.
Tony Lanzafame with Microsoft. He's a collaboration and a solution specialist working at a state and local government. We're joined by Kelly Brown. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
Kelly is a modern workplace solution specialist focused in our federal group and civilian agencies. She's working with Medicaid and Medicare, Social Security Administration. But in this panel, you also help as a lead trainer on the Microsoft Immersion experience.
Exactly.
Right? So you understand really well how these these challenges face us, right?
Exactly.
Bob Ballard. Bob's the principal cloud strategist and solution architect at Planet Technologies. Bob has a 14-year experience at Microsoft before coming to Planet. And we're joined by Jerry Martin. Jerry is a Planet engagement manager and cloud strategist helping our customers work through these problems. Before that, though, Jerry had a long illustrious career working with Microsoft consulting services and other consulting organizations. So helping customers adopt this technology is stuff Jerry's doing every day. We're really excited about this, Jen. We can't wait to see what you have for us today.
Great. So getting started, when we're going to look at what we want to talk about, the first things that we have to do is know what tools we have. And so really when you start looking about collaboration and communication, things you can use, we've got Yammer, we've got SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and Skype for Business. Now you guys may be wondering, why didn't I mention Groups? Because Groups is something that we've heard about for many years now, a real powerhouse, something that we can use inside of Office 365. But when it really comes down to it and we look at how we communicate, and you see from the graph that's on the screen, Office 365 and Microsoft Groups and security and compliance, because let's face it, we don't do anything without having a high concern for security and compliance, but Office Groups and Microsoft Graph are really the foundation. So every time we're using any collaboration tool inside of Office 365, we're actually using Groups. So it should never be a question of, am I using Groups or am I using Teams? Am I using Groups or am I using a SharePoint site? Because it really doesn't matter. You're always using Groups. So that takes one of the things out of the equation that we don't have to worry about. But then beyond that, we go to, are we co-authoring? Are we sharing documents? Are we having meetings? Am I just sending emails? Am I going on to communities at large where I want to say, hey, I need help with X? You know, maybe I want to talk to somebody in my company and I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I know someone in my company has the expertise. And so when we start to think about this, we really run into two scenarios with our communication tools. We have the inner loop. This is the group of people that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis. This is going to be my direct team. It's going to be my managers, the people that work with me. We're solving a problem. We're working day to day. These are the people that I've probably got them on speed dial. I'm talking to them. I'm in teams with them all the time, having great conversations. Then we have my outer loop. We had a great scenario. We had our team company meeting this week, and just this week I got to talk to people that, they're really part of my outer loop. I don't work with them on a daily basis, but we are still connected. But I would reach out to them, in a different way than I'm going to reach out to my inner loop. And so when we start to then look at those scenarios and say, how do we deal with this? I've got all of these different things that I do when I'm communicating, and I've got these different people that I'm talking to. The question goes from not necessarily what tool do I use when, but it comes down to more of who am I communicating with. So we want to look at our inner loop and our outer loop, and certain tools are going to be better aligned for talking to your inner loop. So something like Teams or a SharePoint site, that's maybe a small group of people, we're working together. That's my inner loop, we're going in and we're being notified. My outer loop is going to be email. If I need something from someone across the organization, I might just want to send them an email. We also have Yammer. Yammer would be a great tool if I was going out to my entire community and saying, hey, could somebody help me in this scenario, or help me with this tool? I don't necessarily know who I'm asking a larger group. That's my outer loop, and I'm going to use a tool like Yammer to communicate with them. But at the end of the day, we have all of these different tools. We really have to look at the culture of our organization. We have to look and say, what are people going to be naturally inclined to do? And then we want to build solutions around that. The best solution that you can ever implement inside of an organization is one that actually works and one that people are using. So we don't want to lose sight of that. We don't want to have new tools and throw new things at people just so they have something new to work with. We actually want to look at all of the available tools that we have and align ourselves to which one is going to make the most sense. And then beyond that, what decision has your team made to work together? It's almost like a collaboration contract. When we're working together, are we going to use email? Are we going to use Teams? I know even internally, there's different teams that I work with in different ways. So being able to have this collaboration contract where we can say, you know what, for our team, we're going to use Planner to manage our tasks, and we're going to use Teams to have group conversations. That way something doesn't get lost in maybe a Skype for Business IM because it's just me and one person versus me and the team having a conversation. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at to do that. It's really knowing what tools are available, knowing how people work. If I'm working with a team and honestly the only thing they ever use is email, then maybe I want to stick with groups conversations because that's what they're going to be used to. If I try to put them over in Teams, it might be a real struggle. Teams might be the end goal of what we're trying to get to, but at the end of the day, I've got to build solutions based on what people are comfortable using and where they're going to work the best. All right, so we're going to hop over now to a demo and kind of get started and show you some of the different features we have. All right, so here I am in Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of times that people, use the word Teams and it gets very confusing. I find that when you're talking about the product Microsoft Teams, if you just put Microsoft in front of it, it's not easily confused with a SharePoint team site. So typically we can go into Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of chat conversations that go on here. The idea around persistent chat is that a team can have a single way to communicate and chat, and people can go back and look at it. There's also a lot of fun things built in there, so you can do a lot of things with GIFs and images and stuff like that to really bring identity to your team to just kind of have a good time as we're all working together. But I can come in here and I might want to upload a document or something like that for people to look on. I might want to ask people's feedback. So I'm going to say, can you please provide me some feedback? And I'm going to put information in here. I'm going to go ahead and send it. Now my team's going to be notified. Whether they're working on the Teams mobile app, the Microsoft Teams mobile app, the Microsoft Teams client, or even on their phone, they're going to be notified and they're going to get that piece of information. We also have files. What's really great about this is that even though I created a Microsoft Teams site, behind the scenes I'm getting a Microsoft SharePoint site. So the SharePoint site is actually handling my documents and my content management, but I'm accessing it through Microsoft Teams. So here I'm able to see that I have some documents that are here. I can even click and say open inside of SharePoint, which would take me to my SharePoint site. But you see I've got files here, which are my general files, but I also have something called project documents. Because we all know working on different projects, some files are ad hoc and can be just put in a Dropbox type area where we'll just put a general of everything. But then other files we might want to organize with metadata or keep segregated. So inside of Microsoft Teams, I'm able to actually support both of these and show them separately so people can drill down into their content. We're also able to add new teams inside of Microsoft Teams or new tabs inside of Microsoft Teams that will allow us to link to and access other content. So Planner is a great example of something that we'd add to. Microsoft is also very supportive of third-party products in this area as well. So if we're using Trello for task management or something like that, we're also able to link in with a connector and get that content. Okay. From most places inside of Microsoft Teams, I'm actually able to go up and open inside of SharePoint. And once I do that, I'm now taken into what's a very familiar SharePoint team site for us, where I see my documents. From here, I can use things like Microsoft Flow to add some operations and different things that we can do, some flows to the document library. Some great examples I've seen recently is when a new document is added here, start a conversation inside of Teams so my team can start giving me feedback. We're also going to have things where we can have content approvals and different things like that. They announced those recently, and we should be seeing those by the end of the year. From here, we can also navigate and link to other things. So to be perfectly honest, your team might not even realize that they went from working inside of Microsoft Teams over to SharePoint. We're able to quickly and easily go back to different pieces from the same spot. All right, so I can come over here, I can see my project documents that I have here. I've got my home page. From here, I would also be able to link back into my team site or my Microsoft Teams so I can go back and get to that content. We have all of our team news here, so it's very easy for us to be able to come in and collaborate and share together. And then I'm also able to see, if I can just scroll down here, I'm able to see some of the documents that I have access to. So here we go, we see the activity that's been on the site as well as documents and things that are here. So all of this is just naturally rolling up and giving me a great way to experience this collaborative environment with others. I've just done a quick demo for you. There's so many different things that we can show, but I really would like to switch back over to the panel so we can have a great conversation with the rest of the team about some of the different things that they're doing in this collaboration space.
Okay, great. Let's get started with our panel. Again, let's reintroduce everybody on our panel. We have Tony. Tony's with Microsoft. Jen, thanks for joining us on the panel. Great presentation. I really appreciate it. Kelly, again with Microsoft, focusing on the federal civilian. Bob, our principal cloud strategist at Planet, and Jerry Martin, our engagement manager. Kelly, let me start with you. One of the things that we hear a lot is, I'm sort of scared to make the wrong decision here. Like, what advice do you have for those customers?
So the advice that I have for those customers is never be afraid to make the wrong decision. And the reason that I'm saying that is because ultimately all of our solutions are integrated with each other. So with that being said, you never have really an opportunity to make the wrong decision. You just have more so of leeway to determine what actually works best within your organization. So the questions that you always want to start off with asking yourself is, who's your audience? How large is your audience that you're targeting? What tone do you want to set? Do you want more of an informal tone with the group that you may be interacting with? Maybe 80% of the time, you may consider that more of an informal conversation. And then also, how fast are you looking for a response? So ultimately, as Jen showed us in her demo, all of SharePoint is integrated with Teams, Planner, OneDrive is built on top of that. You can add in all kind of different tabs within Teams, and then ultimately Office 365 groups is created when creating a team site and when creating a SharePoint site. So never be afraid to make the wrong decision. We have your back.
So one of the things I love about that concept that you just talked about, and I want to reinforce what Jen sort of said too as well in her, and it's really about how people can consume this, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, if we decided that we wanted to do Teams with a flow and that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden, we see that customers their users aren't adopting it, we can go back and re-architect, right?
Exactly.
Right. Is anybody seeing scenarios of that right now where customers have said, hey, we want to do it this way, and then realized it wasn't the right way and come back and done it again? Is anybody seeing things like that?
Yeah, well, so there's been a few, right? So if nothing else, what we've seen is customers, so if you've been around Office 365 for any length of time, your options have grown threefold since you got on when it comes to collaboration, right? So that re-architecting is happening even in a case where people said, oh, I rolled it out and and I didn't like it, or my users didn't use it and I switched. I mean, the reality is groups didn't exist 2 years ago. Teams is just coming to the government tenant, soon, right? And so, and by the way, there'll be some other collaboration paradigm another year from now, right? We don't know what that might be. So I think just the nature of change in and of itself should give you that sort of realize that I can't get it perfect because it's going to constantly change. So why am I chasing this perfect strategy to roll out if it's going to all switch in a year from now anyway, and I might like that way better than what we're doing anyway, right? So just get it out there. Let your users, put some rules around it, right? And make sure you're meeting security and governance and all that stuff, and let your users sort of decide what works for them. You'll know quickly. We talked in the other session about clearly our Southeast state that didn't turn off groups and had thousands of groups in the first 2 weeks. Groups was a great choice for them, right? They didn't even know it, right? And so let it happen.
Tony, I'm curious, with the recent announcements around Teams, something that's soon to be released in the government tenant and the Skype pieces of that, are you getting questions from your customers about that? And what advice are you giving them?
Oh, absolutely. So, there's a lot of buzz around Teams today, especially with Ignite last week. So pretty much what we're telling customers is, continue to use Office 365 groups, because then you can create teams out of that. And if needed, just spin up a trial tenant and kick the tires on it in the meantime.
What about and Jen, what about some of the user challenges, the adoption challenges, right? I mean, so again, we've sort of, in the conversation we just had with Kelly, right, we're not afraid to make mistakes, but at the same token, we want to make sure our users can consume these services. What advice are you giving people out there?
It's actually a lot easier than it's been in the past. I think that with the products, they're coming in and they're making it a lot more foolproof. So whether I'm in a SharePoint site or whether I'm in Microsoft Teams, whether I'm in Planner, which is associated with a group, I'm able to easily navigate back and forth. So with a little bit of navigation, and like I talked about with that collaboration contract, I think it's a lot easier for users if you just set them up to be successful and focus in on every team, there's probably one or two key things that they're doing. Let them focus in on that, kind of take their feedback and keep going with it. But I think adoption is actually getting a lot easier just because of the nature of the UI. And I joked about how things can be so simple that my mom can use them. But my mom is at a hospital that did a migration to Office 365 in the last year. So it's been very interesting to have the conversations that I've actually had with my mom. And I'm like, okay, I've been saying that for years. And actually, it really does need to be simple enough for my mom to use it now. But it is. You're able to kind of click and go through and change things. And at the end of the day, your users could care less if they're using groups, Microsoft Teams, OneNote. They just want to get to their content. So a lot of it can be solved with a little bit of user education and then just pointing them to the right direction.
And also, Delve is a great tool within the stack to help find it. So it doesn't matter where you put it. John mentioned the Microsoft Graph earlier in the presentation. Everything's connected, and Delve exposes that. It makes it easy to find information.
And I think that's great, and I use it every day, but I got to be honest with you, sometimes I'm scared that I use it. And so, Jerry, that brings up a really interesting question, right? So when I put Delve on there, I want to make sure, or even in my Teams and other things, I want to make sure this stuff is secure.
Right.
And I know that you spend a lot of time working with your customers talking about security, all the way from EMS and all down to how they make these secure. What advice are you giving to customers?
Well, I think consistent with the message so far, we just talked about specifically what Kelly was saying, and then probably in the last session with security and governance. The conversation always starts out in a very simplistic manner, and we always say, you're concerned about, as an end user, my data and our data, right? And sort of like the inner and outer loop that Jen was just talking about. And so we break it down very simply like that, and have those conversations around governance, have those conversations around security, and then my ability to self-identify what's my data and our data, and that in turn exposes itself appropriately in Delve, so that I can identify what I want people to see and what I don't want people to see, and how it gets exposed through Delve.
And with groups, the great thing about that now is we have Office 365 groups, which comes, if you looked at that diagram, was that base. So now I'm using the same control and group of people for SharePoint Online and for Teams and for Planner. So in previous versions, way back in the days, we were using different groups and we had to add people and manage people in a lot of different places. And now we're able to just take advantage of that underlying group, so things actually get a little bit easier to manage, I think, going across the stack.
And the speed at which you can expose that and the self-service nature of that is very, very much an advantage from an administrative perspective, because that overhead burden is not there as well.
So one of the things I think is fascinating right now, and so much has just recently came out on this topic, in particular around Teams at Ignite. So we had this Skype announcement, which is really exciting. But I also, anybody who's been following LinkedIn, I know I follow it. So now we have this possible for external access for Teams. So what, Kelly, what kind of advice are you thinking about giving to your customers as they adopt that?
As they adopt the external users. So that is something that a lot of the teams or a lot of my customers have been asking for, because when they collaborate on certain projects or if they're collaborating with a certain group quite often, as I do with some of my system integrators, for example, there are times where we want a place to put all of those documents. So the advice that I'm giving to them is you can still set policies and permissions for adding those external users. So never think that I'm going to add them and they're going to be able to access all of my data. They're only going to be able to access what you give them permission to access and the rights that you give them as well. So they can be set as a member, they can be set as an owner, depending on how much leeway you want to give them or how much flexibility within the group. But I just want to always reinforce the fact that we can set those different privacies and permissions whenever you are thinking of adding those external users.
And so, Bob, being our resident expert on governance here, I'm sure that ties into your thoughts there immediately, right?
Yeah, right. So, tracing it back to the previous conversation, it's just another surface, right? Not, pardon the Microsoft pun there, but another surface to just determine, does it or does it not fit, right? Mm-hmm. So, in my mind, the collaboration kind of experience and paradigm by teams screams to be one of the venues that external collaboration works. Mm-hmm. But you have to roll it through how you're using it in your organization, and then what your comfort level is and how it fits with sort of the rest of your policies, right? Most organizations enable external collaboration in a few specific places, right? And then they sort of say, this is what you do when you're, they put some rules. This is how it works for us in our organization. And Teams is just another one to either add or not add. But I'm going to say in my general conversations, I would probably slide it into a likely place to target, just because it's kind of built for that, right? Mm-hmm. It seemed like it was missing that from the beginning because of how easy it is to make a collaborative environment and that boundaries could be anywhere.
And I just worked, actually, when I was preparing for my Ignite session and I was working with the team at Microsoft, we used an external team. Mm-hmm. And it was really great. We were able to share our files, get what we needed. But when we logged in, we immediately saw at the top, external users have access to this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great
So
idea.
in addition to being able to do it, they're notifying users more. So like if you start working with your users, a lot of it's soft education. People inherently want to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. So it's educating them and saying, if you're going to use external collaboration, here's the tool that you use it, here's the things to look out for. But then if someone goes to the site, there's some nice subtle reminders that Microsoft has naturally built into the product that help people realize, oh, this is an external area, now I've got that filter on and I can make sure that I'm doing it. So I think they're even getting better at making it easier for us.
I've not heard that. That's awesome. So is that system created, or do they create
It's
it?
system created. So when you share a team and then you share it externally, it will pop up at the top and say, this team is being shared externally.
That's
Additional
great.
notifications.
That's great. So, Tony, I'm sure your customers are hitting you all the time, like, what tool, when? You guys got so much, why all this overlap? And how are you helping them stay up to date?
So events like this.
I love it. Great answer. And fantastic partners.
Fantastic partners, absolutely. So, so there's a lot of guidance on Microsoft's site. Ignite sessions. The fasttrack.microsoft.com. There's a wealth of information out there. But the problem is that customers tend to drown in that information. But I think we've got a saying at Microsoft. Fail fast. So just don't be, as Callie said earlier, don't be afraid. Just roll it out, and if something doesn't work quite right, it's not poured in concrete. You can go back to the drawing board and move and readjust and move forward.
But I am right from a Microsoft perspective. These are questions you're getting all the time,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely. And the way that I like to propose that to my customers as well, as we don't look at our solutions as a one-size-fit-all thing, because if you think about it now, we have up to 4 different generations working in the workforce now. And all of those different generations and diverse groups have different ways that they are best innovative. So we like to provide those solutions to our customers and then also make them realize that all of these different solutions can be used ultimately together, but some better than others depending on the situation. So I just like to level set off and just let them know that it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all thing. For particular situations, there is a best use case, but we also like them to be open-minded and say, well, we give these to you and we give you access to all of these, you can kind of adjust as needed for whatever the situation is that you're working with within your organization, but you also have to look at your employees overall and just be able to give them access to what works best for them.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things I love to talk to customers about is, you know, when we first, you know, Planet actually did the very first, you know, BPOS migration in government, and you know, I think we might have done the first Office 365 as well. And you know, in those days, you know, everybody sort of thought of this as sort of a mail migration, data migration, right? While we still do a ton of that work, I mean, that is still a core of what we do. So much of what we're actually helping customers with is problems like this, like governance, security, compliance, and then of course, end user adoption. Like, how do we make this stuff real and make it valuable? You know, Microsoft likes to throw around the term digital transformation, but how do we just make it real to make it useful to our customers? So, you know, Jerry, tell us about some of the things you're seeing in terms of how that's happening and how it's manifesting itself.
Well, extension of what Kelly just said, but what we're doing is verbalizing that in a way that they understand. So every one of our customers has a diverse customer end user set. That diverse end user set is always, we always term it, it's what's their front door to the content. Their front door to the content is always going to be different. And what we try to do is understand that end user experience and then adjust for that and also train for that and have the ability to provide the right experience for the different end users that are trying to access the information. It may be a security conversation, and also maybe just a comfort conversation on how I get there. And then make sure that we have an ability or vehicle to help them understand the ins and outs of what that new experience looks like.
You know, what I always like to tell people is, you know, if the data moves from on-premises to the cloud, but the end user isn't able to leverage these tools, we have a failed migration, right? Right? I mean, it's failed from an end user perspective. From a technical perspective, all the ones and zeros are moved,
Right.
but you know, we haven't really, you know, gotten the ROI out of this investment that we really want. So I love people throwing people on the spot on panels here. So, you know, one of the things I thought I'd do was throw out a few different scenarios and see if we can't have a discussion about what we think might be the right tool for that scenario. You know, no pressure, you guys. We're all good
No
here.
pressure.
All right, so if I was in a situation, because none of us ever see this in the field, we want to keep a project team in sync and on schedule. Who has some thoughts on what might be the great tool for that? Jen, I know you do. Come on now. You're itching to jump in.
So my pick is Planner. Planner is so simple. It's so easy. People can access it from multiple different, you know, devices and different things. It's very easy, drag and drop, and I can do tasks. So I would, if I was keeping a team on track, I would probably use Microsoft Teams connected to Planner. I would drop all my documents in there. I would have regular conversations, and then I would use Planner to manage and organize the tasks, mostly so I can see charts and know when Bob's not getting his work to me, and then I can go from him
What?
and do it.
He's taking
You know,
on a
I'm
new
just saying,
leaf.
Bob.
It was you she picked on.
He's
not
taking
me.
on a new leaf. Jeez. And might I add, the mobile client is awesome.
Yes.
The mobile client is awesome. All right, good. Anybody have any feedback on that? Anybody want to
couldn't have said
disagree?
it better.
So I was going to throw out to make sure to connect it to Teams,
Exactly.
right? Or so, you know, that piece of it, particular, you know, that adding the tab right to the
Yep.
Teams client, but then you hit on it off the bat. But that's something, and you showed it in your demo, and we haven't really talked about it that much since we sat down on the panel, which is the Teams client is very customizable, both with
Yes.
Microsoft connections and then hundreds and hundreds of third-party other collaborative solutions and pieces and parts as well to make that sort of a unified experience that works for you in your environment and culture.
Okay, here's the next one. I like that. The next one, I want to work with a small group on a collaboration of a corporate document.
Yep, so I can divvy in on that one. So I would definitely say Teams. I would say Teams is kind of the hub for everything. I would say
It's looking that way for sure.
definitely. But it depends on how often you're looking to collaborate. Is that going to be a short-term thing? How many people do you have involved? You know, it's a smaller group. Groups can really adjust to a larger audience or scale down to a smaller audience and kind of just keep that as an intimate setting, more formalized through email. And then depending on how much input you want your team members to weigh in. So then that's when jumping into the Teams platform with the persistent chat would actually come into place. So I'm kind of on the fence with both. On the fence with both.
I would say that to add to that, not only is Teams the great first front door to that information, but its ability to be able to be viewed from SharePoint, for example. So somebody else's experience may be that SharePoint UI is their comfort zone, right? And so the Teams gives the usage of the Teams gives the ability to be very diverse about what other team members view that same content with, and that's why I like Teams as well.
I'm different on this one.
Oh,
Right.
So I think it would depend on the number of people. But if we've got 1 or 2 people working on a document, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to put that bad boy inside of OneDrive for Business.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
where.
I'm going to
Oh, yeah.
share it. I'm going to send an email, and we're going to get it done. And then when the document's done, I'm probably going to end up moving it to wherever it should live as a team. But if I'm working with just a
Exactly.
couple of people, I'm OneDrive all day long.
I was going to hop
Exactly.
in with the reality dose, which is usually most small collaborative environments start by the collaboration of one, right? Like I'm writing a document and I get to a certain point and I say, Jen, can you help me? Right? If that's the case, the likelihood that you made a team and put the document in to collaborate with yourself is almost zero, right? So it's going to go out and begin its life in OneDrive probably 75% of the time, unless it's a really in advance known collaborative situation.
Exactly.
Then you drop it in a team.
Right, at some point, yes.
So we've got a few minutes left, and one of the things that I want to throw out here in the last sort of question here, and this could be a long conversation, but is a ton of customers who try to ask us the question, what is the best repository for certain types of documents, right? So we mentioned OneDrive here, we've got Teams as a front end to that, but of course we've got SharePoint as well. I think we would be remiss if we didn't give software some guidance in terms of what we're seeing in terms of what should end up in SharePoint, what should end up in OneDrive, what should end up in Teams. I mean, I know we all have thoughts on that. That could be a 3-beer conversation for sure, but who has some thoughts they want to share on that?
Well, so anything that you put inside of Teams is naturally going to go and live inside of SharePoint. So we win that way, and it's super easy. What I'd say, like if we look at what's happening with the classification of documents, just what was announced last week at Ignite, we have, and people have been waiting for this forever, what happens when I put a document into SharePoint, I've got metadata that I can classify about it, and what happens if I forget it? Nothing happens now. What's going to happen very soon is it's going to be highlighted in yellow, this document needs attention, hey, you're supposed to fix it. Then we're going to be able to attach flows to it and say, hey, send this out. So when you need management of documents and where are they going to go, we really need to think about SharePoint and putting them in there and adding the metadata and classifying them that way. We're getting further with OneDrive as well with a lot of the announcements that they've made. So then I think it comes to the me versus the we. So if it's a me file, maybe 1 or 2 people when we're sharing, I'm going to be living in OneDrive. If it's the we, I'm going to be having it stored inside of SharePoint, adding metadata where I need it, classifying it, using any of the rich policies we have for features inside of SharePoint where you can put retention policies and stuff like that. And then I'm probably going to use Teams to talk about it.
Yeah, I just got one other piece to this, and I think this is what sums it up a lot of times with the OneDrive versus SharePoint, because you're right, Teams already is SharePoint, right? And that is sort of the document lifecycle process, right? OneDrive is about content creation, right? And generally a reasonably small group. We understand where teams fit in as we get to larger groups collaborating on a doc. But if it needs to be sort of shared and maintained for historical posterity in any way, the idea behind OneDrive is that it's attached to the user, and users leave organizations, right? So at a certain point when it becomes sort of delivered out to a group and is owned by the group, it needs to go into SharePoint or some place other than OneDrive. But and that's the way I like to think of it. The birth of the document, the early creation cycles, and then it moves into its more permanent home later often.
My data, our data.
Right.
I like to think about it, how I explain to my customers a lot of the time is SharePoint is the big platform. Everything kind of revolves around SharePoint, and then I kind of go down into the downward pyramid almost. So SharePoint groups for your smaller groups, and then OneDrive is the me. That's mine. So that's kind of like how I like to give my customers the visual of SharePoint being the larger platform, larger groups, the smaller, sum of people, and then the OneDrive is the me and my personal documents.
Terrific. Well, what a great discussion. I think we could probably go on for a long time on this, but we very much want to thank our panel. Thank you very much for your input. Appreciate it.